On this episode of Tested Muscle, we've got something really cool. This is a 1962 Pontiac Catalina 421 Super Duty. This is basically a factory-built drag car for those who wanted something that was a little bit on the understated side, but wanted to smoke people at the drag strip, and it's coming up right now, right here on Tested Muscle. On this episode of Tested Muscle, I'm behind the wheel of a car that I never thought I'd have the opportunity to drive. This is a 1962 Pontiac Catalina 421 Super Duty, one of 162 made, and it has a total of, you ready for this? 7,501 miles on it. This is a dream car for so many hot rodders back in the 60s, for a host and a journalist like me. Folks, this is an episode of Tested Muscle that you're just gonna love. So where did this car come from? This car is part of the Gilmore Auto Museum collection in Hickory Corners, Michigan. You know, they were gracious enough to let us use the car, to let us film it, and I'm going to say this. If you have never been to the Gilmore, you have to put it on your automotive bucket list. It's a 90-acre campus with some of the most beautiful automobiles in existence. Not only are they running, they have a supercar exhibit, but they have a bunch of pre-war stuff. They have a bunch of vintage motorcycles. But even cooler, they've actually replicated a Midwestern Main Street complete with a Ford, Lincoln, and Cadillac dealership. And when you walk into the dealerships, you know what are in there? Actual cars from the time period by which the dealer was created. There's an old Shell gas station. There's an old school diner. Up there with the top 5 I've ever seen. Ever. And that goes with anywhere in the world. Tested Muscle is brought to you by American Collectors Insurance.
With agreed value policies, variable mileage plans, and the option of using the repair shop of your choice, it's no wonder that American Collectors Insurance is the #1 rated collector insurance company with 5-star reviews nationwide.
Let's talk about styling for a moment, and let's talk about the era in which this car was made. You know, in the early 1960s, we were coming out of the jet age. The United States was coming out of the jet age. So the large fins were going away. Going into the early 60s, things started to change. The lines on cars started to become a little more contemporary, and the cars got more, say, user-friendly, right? Not that a 59 Caddy wasn't, it's just, you know, from what we think of today to back then, this car, it is a very, very handsome car, especially when you combine the black paint with this tricolor blue interior. It really doesn't get too much better. It's very interesting. It's very odd for a car to have kind of masculine, you know, elegant lines and still have a kind of a muscular kind of stance to it. Now, all of that culminates when you drop your eye down kind of below the belt line, below the window. You know, you've got this beautiful stainless strip of chrome that goes to the back. You have these gorgeous 14x6 8-lug wheels, which are actually big old drum brakes, right? These 14x6 drums, you know. But the big thing in this car, the thing that your eye probably catches, is that big old scoop on the front. Now, the hood scoop, that is an ultra rare option. And we've done some pretty extensive research to find out that that scoop on this car was actually installed at the factory. This is the only one that I have been able to find where that's an actual thing. In 1962, Pontiac had this idea that they're gonna make a car straight up for drag racing, straight up for that guy that wants to go to the racetrack on Sunday, rip through some gears, and really enjoy his kind of executive business coupe. They did that with this, the 421 Catalina Super Duty. Exterior wise, it's just, I love all the stainless. I love the chrome. You know, on the edge of the front fenders, you have these beautiful stanchions that come off and really just kind of grab your eye to let you know where the corners of the fenders are. However, what's interesting, no side view mirrors on this car. None. We have seat belts, but we don't have any side view mirrors. I don't know, and if somebody in the comments could let me know, I don't know when side view mirrors were mandated, but if you know and I don't, let me know, because I would personally like to know. The other thing is when you look at the way that the taillights are sculpted in this kind of half moon shape, again, it's one of these rare cars that the more you look at it, the better it gets. And color wise, just badass black. That's it, badass black, white walls, and just tough as nails, right? I feel like if this car, if you were in the mob in the 60s, you could drive this. You could pull up with someone, intimidate the hell out of them, and they would be like, I should probably give all my money to this gentleman. All right, so let's talk about the interior for a moment. Big guy, 6'4", 245, total greenhouse. My visibility is fantastic. But as this was a Super Duty, it's a very, very minimalistic, kind of Spartan interior. There's no radio. We do have a heater control. Believe it or not, there is a rear speaker in this and a front speaker, but there's no stereo. And it was optioned that way. And we really don't know why. So this particular car was restored about 15, 18 years ago, thereabouts. The interior in here is 100% original. It is in shockingly good shape. Most Super Duties are bench seats. This one had the upgraded tricolor interior from the Pontiac Ventura, which was an option. So, you know, we have these actually very comfortable bucket seats. We don't have a center armrest or center console, but I will tell you, you know, at my size, it's still very comfortable. Now, the dash bezels, the chrome and everything here has been redone, but the seats themselves are original, and it's quite amazing the condition that they're in. You know, as far as kind of low back buckets, they're actually quite wide. They don't offer anything in the way of support, right? So if you go around a corner and, you know, you get kind of lay into it, odds are you're gonna fall right out of the seat. The dash itself, the cluster is actually quite Spartan. I mean, I have a gauge for my generator, because no alternators yet. A beautiful sweeping, you know, speedometer that goes up to 120 miles an hour, and a gas gauge. That's kind of it, right? That's all I have. Now, inset, in the cluster itself that you can't see, yes, there is a temperature gauge. But a very cool thing is that when you start this thing on a cold start, there's a green light that comes on. And underneath that green light, it simply says cool, C-O-O-L. Just to let you know, do not romp on this car yet. Do not jump on it because it is not up to temperature. And if you do that, you're going to break something. Now, something about the 421 Super Duties that you should also know is that the front ends on these cars, it was an option, but it was a lightweight front end. That meant aluminum fenders, aluminum hood, aluminum bumpers front and rear, aluminum radiator support, and aluminum inner fender wells. Now, this car is not a lightweight Super Duty, so everything up front here, all steel, and that's totally fine. I mean, you know, you look at this thing and it's a cruiser. You know, because it's a Super Duty, you've got a massive, I think it's a 9.3-inch rear end with 430 gears. So you're not taking this on the highway, right? We're cruising right now at about 45 miles an hour, and we're tacking it at like 2,100 RPM. 50 is about $3,000. So this is a to the drag strip on a trailer or to your local drag strip and run it and then drive it home type of car. It's also, these cars were also not known for kind of sitting, right? It's not the kind of car you want to sit and let idle. It's something that you want to have constant airflow with. And to be honest, we've been driving this car for a fair amount of time. And because of that massive hood scoop and the fact that it's only about 80 degrees outside, the temperature's never gone above 170 degrees, which is very admirable for a car like this. Sitting on top of the 421, you have twin 625 CFM Carter carburetors. You know, power output is 405 horsepower and 425 pound-feet of torque, but as most people know, Pontiac vastly underrated the power of these things. Most people will tell you that it's more along the lines of kind of 450 to 465 horsepower and around 500 pound-feet of torque. Now, again, you know, we're just cruising this car, and you know, we're not going to abuse it in any way because it is such a rare car and it's probably the nicest Super Duty in existence. But, you know, we're in third gear, 2800. Like, if you kind of just slowly kind of roll into it, it pulls, and it's not like right now, pulling. It's interesting. It's not violent in any way. It's more thrust than just like bulldog acceleration, like punch you in your back. How does all that power get to the pavement? Well, right here. This is a Borgwarder T10, and it is a close ratio box. It's got like a 9 3/4-inch rear in the back, and it has 430 gears in it. So it really does kind of step out and really boogies when you put your foot down to it. You know, quarter mile, 12.5 seconds, low 12, something like that if you're really getting after it. You know, from a handling perspective, you see this? Absolutely nothing is happening. It's more of a a guide wheel as opposed to a steering wheel. Like, turn it enough and you'll go in a direction, but don't ever think you're doing any kind of emergency maneuvers on here. As far as brakes, you look under that hood, there's the smallest master cylinder in existence. It's about that big. The four-wheel drums, the 14 by 6-inch drums, now if I go to haul the car down from speed, look, I'm coming to a stop sign right now. Does it stop? Sure, it does. And you know what? In a panic stop, you probably get it to stop you relatively well one time, but it's not something that I would want to make a habit out of. Clutch engagement is, you know, kind of midway up the range. Put your foot down. God, the thing about this BorgWarner is the shifts are so tight. It is really a close ratio box. And what's even cooler is that I feel like an old school drag racer, right? I feel like, you know, you're down here, you've got your one hand on it. Every shift that you make, you're literally leaning forward so that your entire arm is extended because the shifter stalk is so small. Now, we talk about handling, we're coming up to a curve right here. We are literally doing probably 45 miles an hour. The whole car moves. You don't feel any bumps, mind you, but what you do feel is everything gets soaked up in that suspension. Again, it was never made to go around a corner. It was never made to handle. You have these very, very skinny tires on it. What it does offer you, though, is one of the smoothest cloud rides that you will ever experience in a car from the 60s and 70s. It's just, it is absolutely delightful to drive. It really is. Wonderful. My other thing is I love the Stewart Warner tack. It is dead set in your eye line. It's beautifully done. And it's very cool because every time you're looking at the tack, you're looking at that wonderful hood scoop on there. And it's just like, it makes you know that you're driving something special. You know, we've been driving this thing around for a good part of the afternoon. And I can't even tell you how many people have come up and they've commented, they want to know the year, they want to know the make, they want to know how many were made. And it's just such a cool car. And again, the more you look at it, the more you go, oh shit, now I gotta go find one because this thing is great. You know, it's always a cool experience when I get to get behind the wheel of something I've never driven before, something that I never thought I would have the opportunity to experience. This was one of those cars. You know, the 421 Super Duty it's one of those iconic cars that you hear about and then maybe you see at a car show, but you never really get to experience it. And the fact that I got to jump behind the wheel of this was just an amazing experience. This is the definition of executive muscle. And I can't help but think that, God, so many European manufacturers down the line in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s looked at cars like this from the 60s and thought about, well, how can we do that? This, you're gonna laugh when I say this, but this is a two-door M5 from 1962. This is that car that people walked into the dealership with and they didn't know that they could check the boxes to get it, but if those lucky few got it right, they came away with this. They came away with this. One of the coolest cars I've ever driven. I love it to death. I have to thank the Gilmore Auto Museum for pulling it out of their collection and letting us experience it. So to them, thank you, thank you, thank you, and we'll see you next time on Tested Muscle.